welcome to iVillage Live from Universal Orlando Resort. Are you one of the millions of singles out there going on date after date and struggling to find the perfect match? Surely Mr. or Mrs. Right must be just around the corner.
All right, but it's okay. The question is, are you worthy? Here to help us find answers is author of Soulmates, Find Your Perfect Match Now, Patrick Wanis. Welcome, Patrick.
Thank you. Patrick,
Thank
thanks
you.
for being here today.
My pleasure.
Lots of questions to ask
Lots
you today.
of questions. Patrick, you say that to be able to date effectively, you yourself have to be date-worthy. What is this date-worthy?
Basically, that means, are you ready and are you healthy? That means, are you healthy mentally, physically, emotionally, and spiritually? I don't mean, do you have a cold and a flu, stay away from everyone. I mean, how do you feel about yourself? What do you believe about yourself?
Yeah, you know, especially, I had come off of a divorce, and it was like, you know, there's a lot of emotional issues, a lot of turmoil inside you, and I don't know if I was ready right away. You know
well, no, you're not going to be ready because you can't have a new beginning till you've let go of the old.
Okay.
You've got to be clear. You've got to be clear in your mind. You've got to be clear as a person. And you're still wrapping up things from the past and trying to work out, why did it happen? How did it happen? How can I change what's going to happen in the future? And am I clearer now about what I want and what I expect in my relationship and from myself?
Okay, so how do we make ourselves date-worthy? How do I make myself a date-worthy
The million-dollar
possibility?
question, the million-dollar question that's answered very easily. It's a very simple answer, but it takes some work. That is, raise your self-esteem. That's step one. And a lot of people talk about this, but they don't tell you what is self-esteem and how to do it. So the first thing is to know what is self-esteem. Basically, it means how much do you like yourself? Do you feel you're significant? Do you feel you're capable? So
let's say that you don't feel that way, that you're feeling insecure or you're feeling not that proud of where you've got to in life.
which is what most people experience.
It really is. Well, what do you do to change that?
And I think it's very good that you raised that point, because for most of us, every day there is something that's beating down on our self-esteem. So self-esteem is how much you like yourself. You've got to look at yourself and accept every part of you. That means if you've got some grey hair, if your body's not perfect, whatever perfect is today, or you've made mistakes in the past, maybe you hurt someone in the past, forgive yourself, forgive other people around you. Identify your strengths, identify your weaknesses. Accept your weaknesses, build on your strengths. That's probably the key step of how much you like yourself. Forgiveness is a very important part.
I went through a pretty long phase of just kind of beating myself up. I don't know how it was with you, but you kind of feel like you're a failure, you couldn't make this work, and you kind of go through a lot of those issues.
Most people, you're right, Guy, because most people in a marriage or it ends, the first thing that comes in their head is, I failed. I can't believe I failed in my marriage, this wasn't my intention. And what the challenge we have is we expect ourselves to be perfect. We are all going to make mistakes. There is no one that's perfect. We're human beings, and that's the challenge that we have to accept. I'm going to screw up, but can I accept it? Because when you beat yourself up, you're making it worse. If you don't like yourself, no one else is going to like you.
What about situations in life where your life changes, not necessarily due to coming out of a relationship, but for example, you lose your job or you lose a family member. Something happens that really causes you to be grieving. You can't snap out of that necessarily. Does that mean you just shouldn't date during that time, or maybe is your vulnerability something that you can share with somebody?
That is a really valid point, and I'll tell you why. The first thing is, for men, when men lose their job, they lose their self-confidence, they lose their self-esteem, because we guys think that we are the money we make and the possessions we have. So if we think that if we don't have a job, we don't think we have anything to offer the world. So that's step number one. With regards to the grieving, if you're going through a state of grieving, allow yourself to go through that grieving. Do not date at a time when you feel depressed. And I'll tell you why. If you're depressed and unhappy, you'll attract someone that has that similar energy, or you'll get into a relationship because you're acting really happy. You'll get together with someone happy, then you'll let the depression out. You'll bring the other person down, and that person will leave. They'll run away. So that's part of being ready. That's part of being date-worthy. So self-esteem is very important. How much do you like yourself? Can you accept who you are? Can you like everything about yourself? The second thing is, and we haven't talked about this yet, being capable. Oh, significant. I think significant is the next one. How significant do you feel? That means, whose life are you impacting? If you're a father guy, right? Okay. Your son or daughter?
I have a little boy.
Your little boy depends on you, so you are very significant, because he depends on you for nurturing, nourishment, shelter, food, water, love.
Yeah.
So if you focus on that, you go, I am significant. It's not, my marriage may have ended, but I'm still significant. Who else depends around you? In this job that you have, all the people behind the camera, all the people crew depend on you, because you're an important part of the whole show.
Would, like, adding new things to your life possibly help with this? Like adding new hobbies or interests where you might show strength?
Anything, this is where you're going to, first thing is significance about how many people's lives do you impact. If you don't feel significant, maybe you talked about being unemployed, go and start doing some volunteer work. I'll tell you why. Every time you do something good for someone else, it raises your serotonin levels. You feel better about yourself. The next thing is, you said about hobbies. This is very important because it's a good way of growing yourself, building yourself up, and regaining your confidence by interacting with other people, starting to do something. For guys, and guys, we all need this because we are very much about doing things. Guys want to do things. We're very active. So when we're doing something like a hobby or creating and building something, we start to feel better about ourselves.
See, I feel very pulled in a bunch of different directions. You know what I mean? Because I'm trying to take care of my son.
Right.
I'm trying to get back into the game, so to speak. I've got, some of the issues from the past that I have to deal with. So my big problem that I have is just focusing on myself. I'm so worried about everybody else in my life, and I think if I can't make me happy, how am I going to make anybody else happy?
Okay, so what you need to do in this situation is you need to make some time for yourself to work on yourself. Where you set aside some time and you say, here is my issue. Where did I feel that I went wrong? Was I too angry? Was I impatient? Was I bringing out my frustration on the other person?
So you don't want to make the same mistakes all over again. Let's say that
you will unless you deal with your issues.
Okay, so let's say you've dealt with your issues. You're looking for a new relationship. What kind of things should you make sure that you avoid? What are the red flags in terms of finding somebody else who's date-worthy?
Okay, that's great, because I left out one thing I wanted to add, which you raised. You've got to believe that you deserve the best. You've got to believe that you deserve better than what you have in your life. And I'm not saying dump your current partner. I'm saying if you're single. Okay, to find the other person that's date-worthy, step number one, identify these red flags. What are the danger signals? Both of you should be clear in your head. What is it in this other person that will tell me, run, get away? Because you know what happens? We meet someone and we get excited because there's this chemical attraction. They're hot, they're sexy, they look like the kind of person we want to be with, but there's something that I call the deal breaker. Don't ignore that deal breaker because it'll come up eventually.
What's the next step we should look for?
All right. Create the 3D picture of your ideal partner. The 3D picture means mental, emotional, physical, and spiritual. What do you expect this person to look like physically? Mentally, do you want them to have a certain level of education? Do you want them just to be intelligent or to be intellectual?
How do you balance that with being open, though, and not being too restrictive in your desire?
I know, it sounds like a contradiction when I say open yet flexible. But you've got to have some basic parameters to start with. If you don't have those parameters, you don't know where to go. So you create this 3D picture. What do you want the person to be like emotionally? Open. Some people love people that have fire and passion and enthusiasm. Some people go, whoa, that intimidates you. So that's not for you. Then the other thing is spiritually. Do you want someone that's really religious or someone that meditates? Do you want someone that's part of a church or someone who's just has their own way of life? Mental, physical, emotional, and spiritual. And here's the next step. I know it sounds silly. Where would you expect to find your 3D picture partner? For example, do you have a rough idea of the kind of person, kind of lady you like?
I mean, I'm sure, like, depending on location would matter to me, where I am, where they're at.
Okay. But I don't mean geographically. I think for you, Namway, you're into books, right? You're into reading.
I do like reading, yes.
Okay, indeed. I'm psychic. Dee. For you want to hang around places where people are also into books. Now, bookstores, libraries, but also open mic nights, poetry readings, that sort of thing, which you go, the kind of guy who'd be into books, where would he be? Where would he hang out?
Right.
And so you think, well, he'd hang out at open mic nights, at poetry readings, at a book expo, at that sort of, that, or a second-hand bookstore that sells, hard-to-find books.
So, Guy, what do you want? Where are you going to hang out?
I've got a whole bunch of places I got to start thinking of, but we're going to actually solve some of those problems. We're going to try to help you find a perfect match, right?
Yes.
Coming up.
All right, we come right back. Practical advice for you to find your soulmate and make yourself more date-worthy. You're watching iVillage Live.